ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. Good morning. Ngaramtse. Mwanshubishe kweli. My name is Fiona Mbabazi, and I'll be your moderator and MC for the day. I am a journalist by profession, and I work for Rwanda Television News. Today we are here, of course, to launch the Rwanda Governance Scorecard for the 5th edition. It is an exciting moment. I hope everyone is excited because the scorecard puts us in the right place. I'm sure many of you will agree, some will disagree, but we'll talk about that shortly when Professor comes to give us what is in details in this scorecard today. So this year's RGS edition coincides with the adaptation of the government of Rwanda's national strategy for the transformation of, for the coming 7 years, which of course is 2017 to 2024. So without further ado, please allow me to welcome Professor Shaka Anastasio, who is the CEO of RGB, to give his opening and introduction of the RGS 5th edition. Thank you.
Honorable Minister of Justice, Honorable Ministers, our Lord Mayor, the City of Kigali, the RC, 1U in Rwanda, my brother Professor Kabele, the Director for Political Affairs, African Union, distinguished Excellencies, members of the diplomatic corps, our government senior officials, representatives of our great security institutions, members of the broader civil society and faith-based organizations, leaders of our political parties, members of the private sector, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed, good morning. Today is a great day, as Fiona said. Today is the launch of the Rwanda Governance Scorecard 5th edition, which is a kind of national index to accurately gauge the state and trends of governance and development in our land. So the Rwanda Governance Scorecard was created to respond to the imperative of evidence-based policy. And it was inspired by the Rwanda's leadership, choice, and commitment for greater accountability. As the world enters the big data realm, Rwanda has started that process quite years ago. First, with the very capable institutions that generate data in our land, but also with Rwanda Governance Scorecard, which takes Rwanda in the journey of openness and transparency in data generation to drive policy. Rwanda Governance Scorecard is made up of 8 pillars with over 30 indicators and over 150 variables. It is built on locally and credible, locally generated data that are credible, that are coming from different sources, both from the public, the private, and the civil society organizations. At this juncture, I want to thank all the institutions and partners that have helped to make RGS alive. Without your effort in generating credible data, we could not make it. It is also our distinct honor to say that Rwanda Governance Board, Rwanda Governance Scorecard, which is a production of Rwanda Governance Board, is a homemade product, but has been constructed from experiences and lessons from different perspectives. We can particularly cite the very inspiring inputs we got 6 years ago when created Rwanda Governance Scorecard from the worldwide governance indicators of the World Bank, but also from other international indices such as Global Integrity, such as Transparency International, and many others. I must also say that RGS creation was an emanation of Rwanda's choice and commitment to adopt self-evaluation in the framework of the Africa Peer Review Mechanism. That policy framework, both nationally and regionally, has provided a basis for RGB senior managers and researchers to keep innovating so that we can meet the expectations of our leadership, our country, and our people. The aspiration for keeping improving. RGS is pillars and indicators come from different sources in terms of relevance and rationale, but in 3 broad sense, we can say that they come from international indices, but also from international frameworks, and we do have also homegrown indicators. The main objectives of the RGS are 3-fold. 1, we aim at generating data which is credible, which is real, which is based on the evidence for both national and international stakeholders, both for engagements, but also for policy reforms. We also, our aim through RGS is to portray the state and the trends of governance and development in our country. The third element is that we aim at identifying critical areas that need improvement, but also suggesting recommendations that help to improve the areas with identified deficits. RGS is a very transparent, open data set. All the indicators and data we use, we also say where they have come from, whether they are from surveys, whether they are from civil society, whether they are from private sector or administrative data. Transparency is our motto. At this juncture, I would want to mention people and institutions that have been very instrumental and very supportive as we kept evolving and developing the scorecard as we have it today. First and foremost, there are people we called our expert reviewers. They have been very instrumental in making RGS a better product with time. The current and past editions reviewers of RGS are the following. We have had Dr. Jendai Fraser, the former U.S. Assistant Secretary of State. We have had John Clifton, the managing partner for Gallup. We've got Dr. Enzin Magi, the former president of the American University in Nigeria. We've got Dr. Lamin Mane, the former UN resident coordinator in Rwanda. We've got Professor Kabele Matlosa, the director for political affairs at the African Union Commission. And we've got Dr. Josephine Odera, the former UN Women Regional Director in Central Africa, including Rwanda. Those names, those people have been very key to make RGS what it is today. They helped us to make it much better. They increased its soundness and credibility. They helped us to capture what needed to be captured, and they helped us to keep improving that wonderful product. I want at this juncture to very much thank all those. I also thank many institutions, partners, among them the One UN and different ministries in our land, who have been at the forefront of partnering with RGB to make sure that RGS is produced, but also is used. It is not easy, and I must say at this juncture, the receptivity we saw at the first RGS 6 years ago and what we see today is totally different. At the beginning, we used to have some sort of resistance. Now we see great partnership and appetite. I want to thank public institutions in the Republic of Rwanda to be so receptive of critique, of inputs, and so receptive of striving to make a change, striving for transformation. I want to, at this juncture, to very much thank you all to be here, to join us in this event. And I want to open this launch of the Rwanda Governance Scorecard and thanking again the people who have accepted to be our panelists today, to share their insights with us and to show us why not what needs to be improved, but more importantly, what has been the impact and the reception of the scorecard as we have it today. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, CEO of the Rwanda Governance Board. We now head over to the presentation of the RGS, the 5th edition findings. I'm sure we're all very curious to know which institution did well and which sectors are still lagging behind and what we should do. So, Dr. Felicien, if you can, you can use this one and then give us the findings. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. As Professor Shaka said, I'm going to quickly present the key findings of Rwanda Governance Scorecard, 5th edition, based on information and data collected throughout various institutions. And thereafter, we will call upon Deputy CEO Dr. Yusta Kaitesi to make a key recommendation from the findings. Now, when we conducted Rwanda Governance Scorecard from the very beginning time, this is the 5th time now, as you may observe, we have some more challenges, and we, first of all, to get data or to even to reach all key informant, but now on the stage we are today, I can say that really we reached the very good stage. Quickly, I'd like to show you the method we are using. First of all, as the professor said, we have the scorecard is composed of 80 pillars, 37 indicators, and 157 variables. And those variables or indicators, the source of information we are using 3 categories. We have international indexes, international frameworks, and national specific indicators. Because some specific information are unique to Rwanda, that is why we also consider the national specific indicators. Now, source of data, we use 3 categories. We have primary data from surveys or expert surveys conducted not only by RGB, but also by other research institutions and think tanks. We use secondary data from various institutions, public institutions, private sector, even civil society organizations, and of course from also international organizations. All of them, from this edition, we count around 48 sources of information. And how are we ranking? To easy facilitating people to understand the way we are doing, we use colors. Now, an indicator or variable to score in green, it's supposed to have at least 80% and above. And the yellow is about between 60 and 79, while the amber is 40 and 60. And the lastly, when the indicator is scoring red, it's in a range of 0 up to 40. This is the way we are doing in terms of scoring. Now, the scoring method we are using, we have 5 categories. First of all, we are using existing percentage. For example, when it comes to data from surveys, we use the percentage from data collected from surveys. Performance scoring, basically, it's about data from institutions with specific indicators. We use the same scoring they use. Scoring against national and international targets. For example, when we have national target of becoming middle-income economy, we are supposing to have annual economic growth of 11.5%. This is like reference indicators. If, for example, this particular indicator is scored exactly 11.5%, this indicator would score 100%. This is the way we are scoring against national target. For international target, we use global agenda, we know like SDGs or Africa Agenda 63, and the other global agenda we are using also. Variable when it comes to gender equality, of course, in order indicator to score 100%, we should have 50-50 between men and the women. This is the way we are scoring gender equality in these particular cases. Now, when we don't have any national target or existing percentage, we use another approach of using forecasting method based on existing or previous editions, so that we consider previous edition as reference, so that we consider other variable as constant, so that we use forecasting based on previous editions. Quickly, I'd like to show you key findings based on the 8 pillars we have. The first one is the rule of law. Rule of law, as you see, we have 5 indicators, and 3 of them are scoring in the green and 2 in yellow. And the most performing indicator in this context is the usage of ICT in judiciary. This is the first one is highly performing in this particular pillar. Next pillar is about political rights and civil liberties. It's the next pillar. We are scoring with around 5 or 7 in political rights and civil liberties. It has as 7 indicators. 2 of them are in green and 5 are in yellow. In this particular pillar, the best performing one is, can you come back? COA International Human Rights Convention. It's the best one scoring high performing in this particular pillar, while the least performing is the vibrancy in non-state actor in policy formulation. The next one is about citizen participation or citizen participation and inclusiveness. With around 3 or 4, 5 indicators. 2 of them are scoring in the green, while 3 are in yellow. Again, here the best performing indicator is power sharing, while the least performing is citizen participation. Next one is about safety and security. As you see, all of indicators are in the green. And here I don't need to comment because even international indexes, they are scoring more or less the same like we are doing when it comes to safety and security. Next indicator is about investing in human and social development. With 4 indicators, 2, all of them are in the green, while 2 also are in the yellow. The best performing in this context is the education and the health, while the least performing is in the social protection. The next one is about control of corruption, transparency, and accountability. With 3 indicators, all of them are in the green, and again, the best performing indicators in this context is transparency and accountability. The next one is about quality of service delivery. Here, I'd like to tell you that with the particular indicator, or pillar, it is the least performing pillars over time. And for the first time, service delivery pillar, again, I may say that it's the least performing pillars when you compare with other pillars. And in this context, as you see, only 1 indicator is ranked in the green, while the 3 remaining are in yellow. And the least performing, again, is service delivery in economic sector. Now, the last indicator pillar is economic and corporate governance, with 5 indicators. 2 of them are in green and 3 are in yellow. Here, the least performing one is national capital and export promotion, while the best performing is the private sector promotion. Globally, those are 8 pillars we are measuring with the indicators, and now I can show you when it comes to details, like some more performance of some more indicators. Now, we took just a few of them, most improving indicators, around above 5%. The first one is the national capital and the export promotion, which improved up to 13%. And the access to public information also scored above 5% with 6%. And performance of the legislature, service delivery in local administration, the use of ICT in the delivery of justice, reconciliation and social cohesion and unity. Those are indicators which scored above 5%. Now, the least performing indicators now, below 70%, because as I said, in order indicator to score in the green, it's supposed to have around 80%. Now, the least performing indicator, the 5 ones, we have a vibrancy of civil society organization in policy formulation, service delivery in economic sector, national capital and export promotion, citizen participation, and social protection. Here, maybe to, you may ask yourself why national capital and export promotion, you found out it was one of the best improving, but yet here it is still belonging to the least performing indicators, meaning that we have to understand the way this indicator came from, because in the previous edition, it was really poorly ranked, but now it recorded high improvement when it comes to improving in every year. But still, it's belonging to the least performing indicators because it doesn't reach even 70%. Now, I tried to go further with some variable because as you remember, we have around 157 variables. And I can't put all of them here. Just I pick some of them which are very critical in terms of improving or in terms of a poor ranking. Now, the most improving variables, here I can tell you some of them. Export as a percentage of import. Because as you remember, we permanently have this balance of payment deficit, and this particular variable recorded a performance or improvement up to 18%. The next one is cases recommended by Auditor General Office, proceeded by PAC. This is also particular a variable which recorded above 20% of improvement. Citizen satisfaction with access to information, improvement with more or less 26%. National environment protection policy and strategy. This is also, as you see, it improved up to 38%. And finally, percentage of citizen satisfaction with the participation in elaboration of district budget and plans. This one also recorded a huge improvement when we compare with a previous edition, whereby citizen participation in budgeting and planning was poorly ranked. But today, although it's still belonging to the least performing variable, but you can see that it improved up to 40%. Now, lastly, I'd like to show you the least performing variables. Just also I keep some of them. One is vibrancy of non-state actors in policy formulation, specifically for academia. And we have also citizen level of satisfaction in implementation of court resolution. This is also critical when it comes to justice sector. This particular variable is also among the least performing one. Another one is about percentage of citizens expressing their satisfaction with service delivery in agriculture services. According to our survey from Citizen Report Card, again, this particular variable is still poorly ranked. Another one is the percentage of citizen satisfaction with their participation in elaboration of district budget. Again, as you saw previously, it is among the most improving, but still it belongs to the least performing variable because it doesn't reach even 50%. In the health sector or in the pillar of investing in human and social development, we have a particular variable stunting rate, which is also still low with 47%. Export as a percentage of import, again, it is still belonging to the least performing variable because it doesn't reach even 50%. Globally, those are key findings from pillars, from variable indicators, and from variables, how we stand today when we compare with previous edition. Now I'd like to call upon this year to present key recommendations from this edition, and also to see how we implemented the previous recommendation for previous edition. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, honorable ministers, distinguished panelists, distinguished participants, all protocol observed. I'm going to present two elements. The first is the implementation of the RGS 4th edition recommendations, and then the second is the recommendations of the current RGS that is being launched. In the previous edition of the Rwanda Governance Scorecard, we had 8 key policy recommendations. And I'll just briefly mention that those key recommendations, given the timing when they were made, and given the state of governance that we are in, they really reflected a period of setting up longer-term strategies and policies, but also multi-year programs. So you will see that some of these recommendations will come back as recommendations for the next RGS, given the multi-year character. One of the recommendations that was in the previous RGS was to scale up and revamp the quality of extension services in the agriculture sector, to spur high productivity and wealth creation in rural areas. What has been done so far is that the 7-year government program has comprehensively adopted policies to improve agriculture productivity, and examples include emphasis on extension services, local production of improved seeds and fertilizers. So we see those strategic and policy orientations as a means of implementing this particular recommendation. Another recommendation concerned the designing and operationalizing of a multi-year national-wide strategy for mainstreaming climate resilience into development planning. The National Strategy for Transformation emphasizes on mechanisms to strengthen forest management and its sustainable exploitation, the control of carbon pollution during power generation, and sustainable land use and disaster risk management. The third recommendation concerned to design and operationalize a multi-year national strategy for sustainable urbanization and rural settlement as an imperative to achieve a middle-income economy status. Acceleration of sustainable urbanization from 17.3 to 35% by 2024 is now in the national strategies. The government is implementing the IDP model villages in all 30 districts, whereby at least one IDP village model has been developed at least in each of the districts. The fourth recommendation concerned to design and operationalize a multi-year national strategies intended to reduce at least 80% of the charcoal and firewood in 5 years into gas and electricity for a sustainable and eco-friendly development. Prioritization by the National Strategy for Transformation of the Sustainable Management of Natural Resources and Environment to transition Rwanda towards a carbon-neutral economy have been incorporated. The government of Rwanda has invested a lot in renewable energy and electricity production, and the NST has committed to reducing by half households depending on firewood as a source of energy for cooking from 83.3% in 2014 to 42 by the end of 2024. Another recommendation is to design and operationalize innovative approaches to increase Rwanda's export capabilities to reduce the trade deficit and improve the overall status of the balance of payments. I think Dr. Felicier highlighted that we still have some weak points in that area. What has been done so far is that there is an establishment and expansion of homegrown industries in order to promote Made in Rwanda. You are aware that our procurement processes and procedures have been revised as well in regards to promoting Made in Rwanda. The NST target is to recapture at least $400 million of imports by 2024. The sixth recommendation is to align sector policy implementation of socio-economic development strategies with those of secondary cities development so that these cities efficiently become poles of growth. Some actions were taken to make secondary cities poles of growth. More significant attention is needed in order to maximize the full potential of secondary cities. The seventh recommendation was to put up mechanisms for effective and accountable delivery of social development innovations to ensure accelerated graduation from poverty and better livelihood to the citizens. The partnership, so those are some of the things that have been done so far. The partnership with civil society in the implementation of social protection services was adopted. The strategy to achieve the national strategy for transformation priority stipulates that to enhance graduation from poverty and promote resilience through partnership and efforts coordination between stakeholders. I think you are aware that also the vibrance of the JAF is a common element and its role in the development of communities is core. The National Strategy for Transformation targets the eradication of extreme poverty by 2024. The eighth and last recommendation for the previous RGS was to adopt a comprehensive national policy that ensures compliance with quality service delivery standards in both public and private domains. Online services have increased, even though they still really are at the base in terms of evaluation. The National Strategy for Transformation has set a target of 90% citizen satisfaction in 2024 and service delivery to be done online for public services at 100%. The National Service Delivery Policy is yet to be adopted, but has been drafted and actually submitted for adoption. Now, I'm going to take you through the current RGS edition policy recommendations. I would like you to note that at least 4 of the recommendations of this RGS are going to be ongoing recommendations. As I mentioned, there are some multi-year policy recommendations emanating from the 4th edition, and on the basis of that, we continue to maintain the recommendation as it's going to be realized progressively. It doesn't mean that nothing has been done. As I mentioned, some things have been done, but the multi-year character of these recommendations, the existence of strategic and policy orientations in this regard is a step ahead. But the implementation of those policy and priority actions is yet to be evaluated in the next coming years. So On the ongoing 4th edition policy recommendations, there is to design and operationalize a multi-year national-wide strategy for mainstreaming climate change resilience into development planning, to design and operationalize a multi-year national-wide strategy for sustainable urbanization and rural settlement as an imperative to achieve a middle-income economy status, to design and operationalize a multi-year national strategy to at least 80% of charcoal and firewood consumption be reduced in 5 years, and the beneficiaries switching to the use of gas and electricity, which is an imperative for a sustainable and eco-friendly development. Another ongoing multi-year policy recommendation is to design and operationalize multi-year innovative approaches to increase Rwanda's export capabilities in order to reduce trade deficit and improve the overall status of the balance of payments. I will now present to you the new recommendations specific for this RGS, which will join the 4 already mentioned ongoing recommendations to make 9 recommendations for the current RGS. The first one is to design and operationalize a long-term strategy regarding social protection program in order to address the challenges of human security. The second one is to design a strategy of increasing the district and in particular secondary cities' own revenue rate so as to fully achieve decentralization, objective and local economic development. The third is to strengthen the national strategy of savings to increase the savings rate as per national transformation strategy. The fourth is to improve infrastructure, especially roads and rural transport in all districts, in order to improve the agricultural productivity and access to the markets. And the last one is to increase citizen participation in the development processes, community transformation, and accountability. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yusuf, this Deputy CEO of the Rwanda Governance Board. Thank you very much. If you'll allow me, please, let's give a round of applause to Professor Shaka, of course, and his team for a very good job. And I think it is also very important to note that it is encouraging to see that some of the recommendations are being put in place and that the country is moving in a steadily and fast pace. Thank you very much. At this juncture, I'll let you go down, and as I called upon my panelists now to discuss in deep depth concerning the 5th Rwanda Governance Scorecard. So I'd like to call upon my panelists as we're about to discuss the Rwanda Governance Scorecard 5th edition. I'd like to call upon Honorable Johnston Businge, our Minister and and the Attorney General for the Ministry. My apologies, sir. Professor Khabele Batlosa, who's the Director for Political Affairs, African Union Commission, Mr. Fode Ndiaye, who is a UN resident coordinator and the UNDP resident representative, and of course, Mrs. Françoise Kaitare, who is the Deputy Vice Chancellor in charge of finance in the University of Rwanda, to help me discuss more on some of the indicators and pillars of the RGS 5th edition. Thank you.
have mine here. I have mine here. You came with it?
Well, thank you very much. As I earlier mentioned, my panelists are here to help us discuss more on the Rwanda Governance Scorecard, the 5th edition in depth. And yes, I think we'll just kickstart it. I'll start off with Mr. Forde, of course. He is the UN Resident Coordinator and the UNDP Resident Representatives. Of course, from the very beginning, UNDP has been part of the production of the Rwanda Governance Scorecard. What has been your motivation? Why do you keep supporting the movement, if I should call it that way?
Thank you very much, Fiona. And let me also thank Prof. Shiaka and the team for a good report and presentation. Thanks the Honorable Minister and Professor, and also the two professors. In fact, I had the opportunity to meet Professor Tengie at the launch of their book, and I was panelist also with Professor Kabele during the gender conference. We have various reasons. Number one, governance is at the core of the work of UN system and UNDP. In fact, it is one of the key founding principles of UN, peace and security, development, and human rights, and all are core aspects of the governance. Number two, we think that the Rwanda Governance Scorecard shows that we could have a governance country assessment that will help us have evidence-based policy, and also help all the development partners, civil society organization, the government, the private sector, see where it is needed to do the extra mile to improve the living conditions of the population. Number three is that for this Rwanda Governance Scorecard, it is a homegrown solution, but at the same time, it's open up to other important reports that are talking about governance, doing business of the World Bank, Human Development Index of the UNDP, Mo Ibrahim Index, Gallup, and all of them. And it gives to that tool, therefore, a grounded scientific way of making sure that we capture the situation. Number four is that it also brings in the perception of the citizen. And I do think that here we have 2 or 3 key areas where I do think we need to translate it clearly in policy, where we have the perception of the citizen, where we have the civil society organization, vibrancy, and so on. And this is done through the Citizen Scorecard, the Major Barometer, and also the Reconciliation Barometer. So the perceptions of the citizen are also taken into account. Last point is that it is important because for all of us, from the government, the private sector, and others, it lays the ground of policies, strategies, planning, and also reporting. So being accountable, not only locally, but globally.
You've also, of course, you mentioned the scientific, how they use the scientific way, but my other question would be, are you happy with the methodology that is actually being used, or should we ask the good professor to probably change the methodology so that they can be, are they international standards?
Yeah, I think that the methodology is moving at the right direction. 2 or 3 things that to my view, we should be doing maybe more is what I call the triangulation.
Because if you look at the security, if you go to Gallup, it's the same. But there are some areas where I did my own comparison between the Mo Ibrahim and here. Maybe sometimes the Mo Ibrahim would be lower than what we have here. I don't know why. Maybe it is on the approach and the other aspect. So it would be important to look at more on the triangulation, and based on the triangulation to see if we are higher, why are we higher? If we are lower, why are we lower? Is it because of the surveys that we are conducting? We don't have other, participants to the survey, or because the survey, the sample that we are using is not the same. Second aspect, it's about perception. Sometimes perceptions might be different from realities. It's difficult to capture in a scientific manner perception because it's a qualitative way. And for that, sometimes the international standard might not be the way that citizens in a given context might perceive what is their immediate needs and their aspects. So whereas the international one are more on the agreed upon general commitment that should be pushed forward. Last point, if you allow me on this, I do think also that we have the reviewers, as Professor Shaka mentioned it. But I do think also maybe if it is not done, maybe we could have a broader sounding board whereby you have inside the sounding board, which shall be beyond the reviewers. You can have a sample of various independent, minds that could look at the way that it is presented beyond the reviewers. So this is a sounding board. I'm always using a sounding board because people will tell you, what is it? And then I think you are more comfortable with that. And I do think that would be my recommendation on that matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Minister for Justice, this is the 5th time Rwanda Governance Scorecard is being produced. What, according to you, is the contribution of the RGS in the performance of the government status in the country today?
Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. Let me say about 2 or 3 things. One, let me say before it came, we woke up in the morning, we went to work, and went home in the evening, and did the same 365 days a year. Nobody domestically told us what was going on, what was going right, what was going slow, what was going quick, what was irrelevant, what was mismatching. Nobody told us anything like that domestically. Internationally, somebody was doing that. We would wake up in the morning and there is Gallup, then there is another survey, there is another survey, many of them who make it a business to do that survey. So even from that perspective alone, on the one side, you are on the defensive. You are busy defending yourself against a survey in which you have no role completely. And you are doing it on a constant basis, every 3 months or every 6 months. And it is either in economy, or it is in rural development, or it is in justice, or it is in environment, or it is in clean water, or it is in security, name it. It will come like that. So if I say that before it came, we were at the mercy of the elements, I'm not totally wrong. The elements could be nice. If there is sunshine in the day and we all go out and bask under the sun, we are happy. But the elements could be tough and there is wind and rain and everything and we are blown off. So it's not good for a country to be at the mercy of the elements. So RGB, consequently RGS, when they came, we were able now to have a mirror in our own house. It's difficult to go and look at yourself in a mirror from someone else's home every day. But if the mirror is in your house, you know how your necktie is doing, you know how your hair is doing, whether it has grown or not, you know a number of these things from the mirror in your house. But from the mirror in your neighbor's house, maybe you'll get there and the mirror tells you something else, and your neighbor will tell you, yes, that's what it is seeing. So you are a black guy like me, and the mirror turns up a very brown guy. But then the owner of the house will decide what the mirror is saying, and he'll say, yeah, that's what the mirror says. So we were always on the defensive, we were always unhappy, we were always fighting back, we were always pushing back, and pushing back at someone we did not have control over. We could not engage on the table. We could not say, okay, you said there is this and this happening in this district, let us drive and go there and have a look at it. So the most important contribution of this process is that we have a mirror in our own house, and they can go inside the house because we are in the same house, check out all the rooms, go in the bedroom. You won't say, that is my bedroom. No, you can't. You won't say, I haven't swept. No, they will go there before you sweep. You are not going to run away from them. They are part of you. The law gives them a mandate to do what exactly they are doing. That's one. Number two, consequently, after establishment and finding resources and starting to work, I remember my own experience is that at the first report, I would call Professor Chaka and complain. I was seriously complaining. I was annoyed. I didn't greet him for a few days. I would even call other ministers and tell them, this Chaka, we need to find a way of dealing with him. We need this RGB. How did it come? We saw it coming, and we did not know it had come to keep embarrassing us and, telling these stories. So that phase, I think we all went through it. That phase lasted maybe a year or a year and a half. I don't know whether it's still standing anywhere, but it left. When it left, we were now faced with looking at reality and dealing with it. So when you look at reality and you are dealing with it, it's different from when someone is telling you that is reality. But because now that is their job, this is Rwanda, that's their job to do exactly what they are doing, and they do it and show it to you. So whether you act on it or you don't act on it is now going to be part of your mandate. How are you going to react to this? Are you going to react by getting annoyed? Fine, you can get annoyed, but those citizens who are not happy with the execution of judgments will continue to be unhappy. So whether you are annoyed with Professor Chaka or Dr. Kaites, it doesn't matter. There are going to be citizens who are unhappy about delivery of judgment. So the next thing it did was that it was a shot to kick us off our seats, and we go and try to deliver. So along the way, along the 5 years, what I think we have done, I think we have now come nearly full circle. There is no more complaint. There is more looking at reality. There is better decision how to relate to this reality. And there is work to integrate the RGS reports, indicators, to integrate them in our plans so that, you know, if they say this is under 60%, this is under 70%, you now have a duty to go as a minister or as a public institution to say, you know, these numbers are not good. And you go right in the departments, in the divisions, in the staff at work to say, who is responsible for doing this next year? And now you assign each other what you are going to do so that the next version, the 6th edition, for example, should not find us at the level we are on judgment execution, the happiness of citizens on judgment execution. If it does that, then we are going to be accountable to our prime minister, we are going to be accountable to the citizens, we are going to be accountable to this country, we are going to be held accountable. So the whole package of benefits that this process has brought is, you know, from a position where we didn't have it and we didn't know what was happening. We woke up in the morning and worked so hard, but didn't measure, and therefore we didn't matter. But now we measure, and therefore we matter. And we are now able to have a homegrown, domestic index integrating international indices. It may not be perfect, and I don't think there is any that is perfect out there, but we are able to wake up and say, this is where we are, according to this index.
Honorable Minister, when you're talking, of course, you mentioned the surveys from the outsiders that pushed us, you know, a bit, or rather made us defend ourselves in some way, one way or another. Pointing this towards some of the reports, of course, we had before that we currently not hearing anymore, which could be a good thing, and this is the point of human rights. Before we'd hear lots of cases or lots of people screaming, we are not at par when it comes to human rights. We had dungeons and stuff like that. I'm saying this because among the most performing indices that Rwanda, especially the best indicators, Pillar 2 says the respect of human rights, we scored at 87.6%. When it came to core international human rights conventions that we have applied, it's now at 100%. What changed over the years, or these were just rumors that were not being counted all along?
Well, maybe it's a mix, but let me say this. When 5 years ago, when we were told that we were, I don't remember where we were, we probably were at 60% or less in our reporting, in our compliance with reports. You see, countries sign up on conventions, and some conventions require that you file reports every year or every 2 years or every 3 years. There is a number of requirements. And sometimes these reports need a lot of work from a lot of institutions. And not only do they need a lot of work, they also need a lot of results on the ground. You don't wake up in the morning and you say all these rights have been complied with, and you send it out there, because someone will come visiting to check whether what is in the paper is also on the ground. So when they started, I think we were probably at 60% or less in complying with these reporting mechanisms. And therefore, I also suspect that even on the ground, we were not doing well. We were not being able to measure what was on the ground. On the wider rule of law, the same story. I believe that when they started, you know, they would tell us, you are not on ground, people are not seeing you, they don't know where you are, they don't know what you are doing, and so on and so forth. So this specific point on reporting obligations has helped us in two ways. One, when they started, you know, we did not have something to worry about. International surveys would come and say we are not reporting, but an international organization does not accuse me to the Prime Minister, for example. They don't write to the President and say, you know, these guys are not doing this thing. They don't. But this scorecard here, it's not ending here in this room. It starts from here, then it goes to the Prime Minister, then it goes to a government retreat, then it goes to national dialogue, then Parliament. Then if you are not doing something, you are busy tying yourself with a rope that untying it will be a major problem. So it kicked us into doing these things, and not only delivering on the reports, but also checking that what is in those reports is also on the ground. So our reporting now is at 100%, not because we were unable to do it 5 years ago, but there was no incentive that was pushing us to kind of, you either do it or someone will point a finger. No. But now, if we don't do it, someone will point a finger. And this is someone who is with us. It's not like it is someone who has come in Rwanda and then they do it. No, it is someone who is right here. So this whole human rights area, Excellency RC just said that some of these perceptions are not very easy to capture scientifically, accurately with a calculator. To have a calculator and calculate the level of human rights protection and preservation is a very difficult thing. So if you have a board like the RGB with the mechanism, the RGS, and a number of other tools that they have, they quietly develop ways of actually measuring these subjective, perceptive areas, which we didn't have. Because one of the problems we would be having with international surveys would be, how did you measure this? How do you measure that so-and-so is not happy? But now, these ones go and actually speak to that guy. And they're able to say, yes, we went. We went to this district, and they are not happy. Why? Because there is this, there is this, there is this, there is that. Therefore, if you work on this, people are going to the courts and they don't have someone to attend to them. People finish their sentences in jail for committing their crimes and they are not getting out. People are taken to the prisons and the prisons don't expect them. You know, a number of things, rights of children, rights of women, rights of all these kinds of rights. People are filing for registration of certain things, which is a right. They don't get it. Now, the RGB, they are here working with you for a year. They have people working on those things. So they send people out to say, you go and check whether actually someone who goes who finishes a sentence in prison comes out the same day. So in the end, we had to develop even electronic tools to enable people to measure some of these things without you having to physically drive out there. So there is a huge impact from the initiatives that they have.
Thank you. We'll come back on the next round. Of course, we'll talk about technology and how it has been implemented in the justice system. Mrs. Francois, now, academia is one of the least performing indicators when it comes to the vibrancy of non-state actors in policy formulation. Why is this so? And what should be done to improve this situation?
Thank you very much. Let's first of all start looking at the RGS as an independent governance index that informs the policy-making process about different aspects and how research can really contribute into this one. There has been gaps in the past in terms of how do we contribute people coming from academia in terms of challenging policies, but also in terms of giving our inputs before those policies are being formulated. And that's very much critical. But looking at the current RGS, we have been able to see that education is one of the areas that have really improved compared to the last 2 to 3 RGS that have been published. So looking at those gaps, I would try to say that there has been more focus on teaching rather than focusing on the research. That's basically the main reasons. People in academia, particularly in our country and most of the developing countries, would start thinking about how do I focus on teaching, you know, going to classroom, teaching people how to do mathematics and etc. But then tend to compromise on the research, which really is very important when it comes to the policy formulation. You can't really say that you have been able to challenge a policy or contribute to a policy unless you have done a research-based indication. So those were the, some of the challenges around that one. But also, how do policymakers engage them in terms of challenging them to do that job? So there could be some gaps in terms of, yes, there is a policy that has to be drafted. Honorable Ministers really explained where we are coming from and where we are now, but also thinking that there are people who can really contribute to that policy that need to be challenged, that need to be pushed, that need to be empowered. So those were some of the background that could bring in those kind of issues. But looking also at what is it being done to be able to address those, because if you look at coming from a public institution, University of Rwanda, number one, we had to look at what are we going to contribute to this country in terms of policy formulation, but also strategic orientation in terms of economic growth. One of the things that we really insisted on is part of our strategic plan for 2018-2025, which is linked to NST1, but also to SDGs, but also to Agenda Africa 2063. So we are really encouraging our staff to do a research-based, but also looking at measuring the performance as the university has to go into this one. So goal number one for our strategic plan is linked to those research-oriented results. Number two is how do we really encourage our staff in terms of coming up with research-focused inputs. As the University of Rwanda, through the support of CEDA, we could be able to establish 10 research clusters, which I'm going to mention. We have cluster number one, which is agricultural transformation and food security. So where are we, what are we contributing in terms of really pushing forward this country to be able to address issues related to agriculture and food security? We have cluster 2, which is socio-economic transformation and sustainable development. Cluster number 3, environmental, natural resources, management and climate change. Cluster number 4, inclusive governance, peace and security. We have cluster number 5, which is urbanization, green cities and human settlement. Cluster number 6 is transformative ICT and knowledge management. We have cluster 7 with the health and well-being. Cluster 8 is sustainable energy and manufacturing. Cluster 9 is about transformative education, culture and creative arts. Then cluster number 10 is transport and logistics. You could ask yourselves, why did we select those clusters? If you see they are all around economic and social development. So we strictly said, if we can be able to drive research around these 10 clusters, there is going to be a significant change in terms of policy formulation and challenging policies. So this is a commitment we gave ourselves as the University of Rwanda. And if you apply for research funding, it has to be around these 10 clusters. So there is a lot behind that. Number two, these clusters bring interdisciplinary approach. When you address issues like SDGs or NST targets, you have to be really interdisciplinary in nature because they cross-cut to one another. Number 3 is about the government. As you might be aware, in June, the government established a National Research and Innovation Fund, which is being managed by National Council for Science and Technology. Reasons behind that is basically to be able to drive research, which is going to be able to inform policymakers for the next years to come. So those are different initiatives that could be put in place to make sure that those gaps in the past are being addressed.
So you've mentioned the clusters, but my question is, are they working? Has that bridge been filled, or is there still that gap that we still have to grow? Because having 10 clusters, yes, that is trying to improve, but is not being felt yet is also another issue. How do we make sure that these clusters are actually working? What bridges need to be built between policymakers and the academicians and researchers to ensure that this information they bring on board is heard by the policymakers?
One of the really evidence that those research clusters are working is this policy handbook, which was recently published. It's Rwanda Handbook of Economic and Social Policy. So all the articles in this book are written, 99% are written by Rwandans, and they are evidence-based. So these are some of the evidences that these research clusters are really working. So this is our first volume, and there are going to be more and more volumes that are coming out. So this was our first attempt that we keep encouraging people that they should be reading the books, but also to make sure that whatever we publish as universities is not kept in our shelves and only read by people who are from academia. So this time we want to make sure that the research we are doing ends up being influencing policies. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Dr. Kabele, as a peer reviewer of the Rwanda Governance Scorecard, my question, and of course I've read what you wrote in the review, the importance of the homegrown solutions. But I'll say that it has not yet been implemented across the continent. We still have people who are lagging behind with finding meaning with the homegrown solutions. What does this RGS mean for the African continent? And do you feel it is time it is adopted, knowing that you sit at the very helm of the African Union?
Thank you very much, Fiona. And let me also recognize of my fellow panelists here on the high table, and distinguished ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. Let me start by saying I'm bringing warm greetings from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, and I'm happy to be part of this important initiative. Straight to the question, this initiative is historic. I want to emphasize, this initiative is historic in that African Union, as you know, has 55 member states. 55. And out of these 55 member states, what we are doing here today in Kigali is only happening in Rwanda. It's only happening in Rwanda. And I think I'm glad you've given Rwanda an applause because that's what it deserves. Fiona, your question is therefore critical because we have the African peer review mechanism. Professor Shaka, my good friend, made reference to it. And I'm sure you are aware, ladies and gentlemen, that African peer review mechanism, 37 countries, African countries, have acceded to it. And of the 37 countries, only 20 have undergone self-assessment and peer review. And of that 20, Rwanda is part of it. Rwanda is not only part of that 20, actually Rwanda is part of the 5 pioneers of African peer review mechanism. When it was established in 2003, Rwanda is one of the 5 countries that pioneered APRM. It came second to Ghana, and then we had Algeria, we had South Africa, and we had Kenya. 5. Those are the pioneers. And if Rwanda is the pioneer for APRM, Rwanda is now the pioneer for governance, national governance index in the form of Rwanda governance scorecard. Now, it is important, therefore, that other countries follow suit. That other countries also embark on their own national governance reports. That, as the honorable minister rightly pointed out, it's important that other countries also begin to have their own mirrors at national level. Look at yourself in the mirror and see and say what it is. Say it the way it is. Don't aim to please. And I'm happy that I'm hearing one of the minister say that Professor Shaka has not aimed to please. It's very important that say it as it is. We normally say, call a spade, not a big spoon. A spade is a spade. It cannot be equated to a spoon. So I'm happy that it's happening that way here in Rwanda. Let's imagine for a moment how our continent would look like, Fiona, if we had not only Rwanda governance scorecard, but we had South African governance report, we had Algerian governance index, we had Kenyan governance review. You may call it different. You can even call it differently. It doesn't necessarily have to replicate exactly what is happening in Rwanda. Adapt it to your own context, as you rightly pointed out, using a local, homegrown solutions relevant to your own context. So it's very important. Now, I was just when I came here and when we were called up here, when we called us Fiona, then I was looking at the audience and the number of stakeholders that are here. In some countries, this would not happen. Believe you me, in some of our countries on the continent, this would just not happen. I'll give you my own country. I come from Lesotho. I'll give you my own country, just as an example. We are embarking on a process of national dialogue on governance reform, more or less along the same lines. When the first meeting, national dialogue, was convened, just to give an example, when the first national dialogue was convened, and we're all expecting that all stakeholders will take part, the AU supporting the process, SADC, Southern African Development Community, in that region, supporting the process. At the 11th hour, issues of contention came to the fore. Now, opposition parties begin to raise some questions that we don't feel that we are given space to contribute. So I'm saying that in other settings, there are so many contentious issues that would even derail this kind of process. So to ensure that all key stakeholders, irrespective of political ideologies, but there should be a national vision that guides us. That irrespective of our differences, there are certain issues that should, even if we don't agree, should unite us, and we think a lot. We think together, even if we don't agree. We don't necessarily have to agree. So the 8 pillars in this governance scorecard present to me a menu that is of a national purpose, if I may use that phrase, of a national purpose, that all stakeholders, be it political parties, irrespective of their differing ideologies, they say, yes, this presents a national agenda. So let's go engage. We agree or disagree. Let's engage. So finally, it is important that we work from the African Union now. I'm talking from African Union perspective now. That we work closely with RGB. It's very important that we work closely with RGB on this initiative, closely, and bring together the African peer review mechanism, which is based in Midrand. And the three actors, African Union, APRM, RGP, through RGS, we find a way of encouraging all the 55 member states of our union to find a way of doing the same thing in their own settings. That would be excellent for the continent. That would be excellent for the continent. Thank you, Fiona.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kabele. As we sum up, Mr. Forde, do you think the RGS can contribute to the implementation of the SDGs? If yes, then how can they do this so that the SDGs are also not left behind? Even as you give your recommendations and summary towards the talk, yes.
Thank you very much. First of all, I do think that, as it was mentioned in the report and the presentation, that the RGS supported the design of the National Strategy for Transformation 2017-2024. And as you can see in the National Strategy for Transformation, it is anchored on Vision 2050, but at the same time also on the Agenda 2030, so the SDGs, and the Agenda 2063 of the African Union. So first, when you influence policies and strategies, through that, you are also supporting the implementation of the SDGs. Number two is that the RGS also inform Rwanda's way of being pilot of the SDG 16, which is on peace, justice, and inclusive institutions. Rwanda is among the 2 African countries, with Tunisia, and among the 10 countries globally piloting the SDG 16. And we all know, if you look at all the SDGs, which are human rights-based agenda and people-centered agenda, SDG 16 is a clear enabler of achieving all the Agenda 2030. That's very important, because we all know that if you go to the SDG 16, this aspect of violence, conflict resolution, this aspect of citizen participation, the aspect of access for all people, the aspect of inclusivity are very important. And we all know that societies which are not fair, which are not inclusive, will fall apart. We all know that. So the implementation of the SDG 16, and we know that the RGS, if you look at the RGS, the 70% of the SDG targets are included in the SDGs. And 30% of all the indicators that we are targeting as well of the SDGs are also included in the SDGs. And if you look at the SDG 16 that Wanda is piloting as well, we also know that 60% of all the 10, 6 out of 10, which is 60% of all that we are looking, the key areas of the SDG 16 are included in the RGS. So that's also very important that RGS is, in that respect, through influencing the policies and strategies, through helping us monitor what we are achieving, is supporting. Last point on that also, the influence and other aspect, is that if you look at the UN here in Rwanda, because I like also always contextualizing, we have our United Nations Development Assistance Plan, 2018-2023. That plan is anchored on the NST1 and is also, embedded on all the evidence base that we are having from the RGS. Now, let me end by giving 2 or 3 examples and take away, as you were saying. One is that as UN, we are involved in various areas, but as I mentioned earlier, the importance of governance. And we know that the RGS has really also influenced the way that decentralization and governance strategy has been designed, as well as the justice and rule of law which is also important in that matter. Second, on the few examples I want to give before concluding is that when you see all the elements in which we are not scoring very well, the issue of citizen participation is important. In that matter, we are also partnering with the government in the capacity assessment of civil society organization. And also in that level also supporting designing capacity development. And we discussed it during the DPR retreat in February last year, which is also a way to move forward on that. So if I have just one takeaway on that, is really, let's not only maybe make it once. I don't know how Prof. Shaka could take it forward, as I mentioned, the sounding board or other aspect. Even if we do not have all these stakeholders in one room, if you have a clear sample that might be quarterly seeing how we are progressing in that implementation. I know that the UPR, the minister, is doing that, and it was very good. And that's something I really think it would add ongoing discussion and ongoing influence on the policy dialogue and strategies. And at global level, if beyond what was said on RPRM, as Rwanda will be reporting on 2019, and the fact that we have RGS has put Rwanda forward in the reporting, because they will not be going chasing indicators. I do think that when they will be presenting, it would be good to take that opportunity, maybe to unlock as a possibilities of partnering globally also in that matter. We know that we had that conference we initially planned on that, Prof. Shaka, and I do think that it would be something important in that matter. And more important in this year where we are celebrating the 70th anniversary of Human Rights Declaration, that would be really something that Rwanda could bring to the table and support moving forward SDG 16, and by the same token, moving forward the implementation of Agenda 2030. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Minister, the RGS, of course, 5th edition reported on the use of ICT in the delivery of justice, which you have done tremendous, and I want to believe it wasn't easy. What do you think other sectors can learn? Because not all sectors have embraced ICT, or they feel it's quite tiresome, if I should put it that way. So what are some of the things you think other sectors can learn to improve and also grow towards the ICT economic base, and of course your conclusions as we sum up? Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. I don't think there's still anything out there that institutions need to learn that is still out there shrouded in some mystery. I think it's all out there. But let me give you a context. Justice is such a large place with so many institutions. Justice is a total sum of many things happening by so many institutions, and the total sum is called justice. There's no single institution that does what is called justice. But the total sum of what about 14 institutions do, the total sum is called justice. And let me pay tribute to the men and women out there in the institutions who do this work. Because they are normally known, we normally know them when the media is criticizing them for doing some wrong thing. But I want to assure you that these people are in the trenches doing a lot of work. And I would really want you guys here to say thank you to them. Thank you so much. Thank you. Now, these institutions, all of them, they are written in laws. They are in the Constitution and different laws. And they are, unlike many other institutions, the lawmakers remembered to say the judiciary is independent. The prosecution is independent. The National Police is independent. The Rwanda Investigation Bureau is independent. This word independence appears everywhere. So as we walk, as you see us walk around here, we are fiercely independent. fear and we jealously guard that independence. Now, tell me how you get these independent institutions and you work through having the same electronic platform where all of them are equal. That means we have to cede some amount of independence. Each of us must allow to cede their independence and come together to be in the same room. Because it's not only independent, we are also unequal. Sometimes we are fighting on who is bigger, who is smaller, who is more important, who is less important. And those fights can be many, as my brother Kabele said. They can actually wreck a country, not just one area, one sector like justice. So before we started on this journey, some institutions already started. You remember very well that immigration had started, Rwanda Revenue Authority had started, I think the police had started with driving permits, the lands. I think there were institutions which woke up very early ahead of us and started. And we would go there and visit and see what is going on. Now, I believe those who are in the institutions which have databases and platforms, you know that the worst thing that you can have as a manager is an institution which is totally manual. A manual system, some of you, if you are still running a manual system, 100%, you better go to church and seek for forgiveness from the Lord. You better go. Sunday is not far away, but you better go. Because a manual system, wherever you are, land, water, agriculture, anywhere you are, a manual system will, you get the information that someone else wants to give you. That's the rule of the manual system. An electronic system, you get the information. There is no, the other bit of, you get the information which someone wants to give you, that bit is off now. It is now the information which is there, available for you to pick. So when we visited these other institutions who woke up early and went quickly, we actually realized that they were doing something serious. The other aspect about justice that people should understand is that people think that justice is about someone walking in a courtroom and some judge walking in there and listening to their case and passing a judgment and walking out. That is like 10% of what happens. 90% includes thinking about filing a case, actually filing it, following it, having a date for the hearing, knowing what your opponent is saying, knowing it in advance, summoning people, going to their homes and giving them documents to say you are coming to court on this date, all the way to the day there is a hearing and there is a judgment and there is, if you are sentenced or it's a civil case, it is executed or you go to jail or you come out. All these things, if they are manual, you are in trouble. You are spending money, you are running around the country, you are driving vehicles, but you are not getting the information that you want, and things are not happening the way you want. And you may shroud it in independence, but it's not about independence, it's about filing a case. So what we have now is that someone in their home, from their house, at midnight on Sunday or Saturday, they can file a case in the Rwandan courts anywhere, in any court of law. Midnight, Saturday night, from your home, you can file a case. That is a typical small thing that I'm trying to say that has never, it was not possible before, because you had to wake up in the morning, go and line up at the courthouse, file a case, receive something else, acknowledgement, and go home with it. Now you can send your case at midnight And if you are accusing me of anything, 2 minutes past midnight, I'll get that message that so-and-so has filed a case against me in this court for this amount of money, which I stole or whatever it is from him. So I have I know that now I have been sued in court. On the African continent, this hasn't happened. No. It is, we are still, we are getting visitors from the African continent to come and see what is happening, what is this thing happening. So once you get this one happening, you remember the problems of summoning people. Probably some of you have ever been summoned to come to court. Someone needed to come to your home and summon you physically. Now, a telephone, a WhatsApp, an email, all these ones have, some of them have been allowed in the law. I don't know whether it's all of them. You can now receive a message on your phone. You can receive a WhatsApp. You can receive an email. I don't know what is allowed, but some of them have now started being allowed by Parliament. We can now summon you on your own electronic tablet to come to court. So we no longer have to drive to your house to look for you. Now, after that, you go to court. Our systems have now started doing some business intelligence about specific individuals in our systems. They say this prosecutor, if you give him a case of this kind of magnitude, he will probably do it for 3 weeks. This judge, if you give him a case, he will probably do it in about 5 weeks. And the system is now getting more matches with what exactly the human beings are capable of doing. Now, the other thing that you need to know is that if a judge orders that you go to jail now, there is a computerized system that informs the correctional facility where you are going that Businje is coming. So the correctional facility waits for you to arrive at the gate. When you arrive at the gate opens and you go in. Someone will open for you. But when the system doesn't inform the correctional service, you go there physically, but they tell you, please go away. We don't expect you. We are not expecting a guest called Businje here, so please go back. And you remember, we used to have a situation where someone would very easily take someone to jail without going through the process. And actually, you end up in a prison by some kind of lies or, you know, you just go there and say this guy has been sentenced and someone opens the gate. Now, it is computers, the systems, which open the gate for you to get in. And you know what? The day you get in, the system tells the management of the correctional service that I'm going to be here for 1 year. The judge has given me a sentence for 1 year, and I'll be getting out on the 3rd of October 2019, you know, probably before midnight, so that I don't get the 4th. So the system is now telling management that this guy will be there until this date. So what RGS is seeing, the scorecard is seeing, is the result of this kind of working together. It's the electronic system. We thought if we don't do it, then we will not achieve what immigration has achieved, what RRA has achieved, what many other institutions have achieved in terms of information, accuracy of that information, speed of that information, transparency of that information, and you know, it's good information. You can't change it. Long ago, people used to think that when you go to court, it is a question of games. You go to do games. You go and if you are a very good liar, you can go and do things, or you can actually go and surprise someone. I'm sure people here know about surprising people in court. You go to court, someone doesn't expect what you're going to say, and you stand up and you surprise your opponent. Now, surprising your opponent has gone away. Before you go to court, many weeks before you go, you must give me every document, 100% of the documents that you are sending to court against me. So I sit with my lawyers, our defense, we know what you are saying, and we also have an obligation to inform you what we are doing. So this kind of platform has taken our performance in terms of transparency and accuracy and speed to a level that we did not dream we could be a few years ago. The number you saw about people are not happy about execution of judgments, did you see that number? We saw it also. We are unhappy about it. We are going to work on it. And Parliament gave us 6 months to be electronic. So going forward, in a very short time, these things called Chamunara, do you know Chamunara? Chamunara is going to be electronic. We are going to be doing auctions online. So whether you are in Russia, in China, in the United States, you will participate in Chamunara here in Rwanda and buy a house, buy a car, buy whatever you want, and you go and sleep in your house in the US without having to come here. So some of these things have helped citizens. You remember when it was starting, there were people who said, you know, citizens don't know these things, they didn't go to school, they can't use computers, what are we going to do about the citizens who don't? But at the same time, whenever they came to court, we would say, well, by coming to court, it has not given you a computer literacy certificate. No, you are still the same guy. So what we are sending out there in the kiosks, in the public information, in the internet cafes, we have trained everybody in the internet cafes to register cases from citizens who would otherwise be driving to the courts. So from 300 miles away, 200 miles away, you don't need to come. You just go to the nearest cafe and file your case out there. So the importance of this cannot be, you know, talked about enough. Yesterday I had the opportunity to share with the Excellency Ndia about it. We are so happy about it because we are now in the community of others, of RRA, of immigration, of all these who went ahead of us. We are now proud members of that community. And we've been able to load all the lawyers in town. We are now going to put the bailiffs and so on the same platform so we can deliver justice in a way that is, at least we are going to remove the suspicion of you are opaque, we don't know what's going on. No, it's going to be transparent. You can track your case. You can see what the judge is doing throughout the process of your case. My takeaway from here, or maybe my concluding remark, if I may will not be totally about ICT. Let it be about civil society. One thing I have noticed is that we can't serve the citizens sufficiently on our own, even if we had all the resources available. Long ago, we used to think that these NGOs, they should help us because they have money from someone. They have money from someone, therefore they should help us. They should come and work with us. Now, what I think, if you wanted me to make a decision, I'm not the decision maker, I would actually share the money I have with those NGOs to go and do this work. Because it's no longer tenable for them to get money from elsewhere. We should actually be the ones budgeting in our budget, put the money for them in our own budgets, because civil society goes everywhere. Civil society builds its capacity all the time. Civil society tells you the way they see it, the same way Professor Shaka does. And you know, when you are not unnecessarily causing problems in their way, they will do 50% of your work, and you will take 100% of the credit. So what I think that is a good thing for us is there are some things that really are doable, and they are doable better by allowing them to be done by partners who are doing these things. And then we get reports, and they tell us what they think we should do. If you've been reading Transparency Rwanda reports, now, if you wanted me to work for an anti-corruption agency, between the Ombudsman and Transparency Rwanda, I would choose Transparency Rwanda and go and work from there. And I'm saying this right now, the Ombudsman is right in front of me. But I would choose Transparency Rwanda because I listen to them on the radios, I read their reports, I see what they are talking to us. I think even the Ombudsman is partnering with them. That is what I think is happening. So we all need to be doing this. The way they decide to fight corruption and go out and they are on the radios. And I mean, if you don't partner with them, that's what the Rwandans say. You are not banking wisely. You are not investing wisely if you are not working with them. You are not doing it well. So my last point was that one. Let us get these partners that are in the sectors that we work with. Let us work with them. If you look at the community policing, it's not done by the police. It is done by citizens. You look at information. Information is not brought in by institutions. It's brought in by citizens. There are many things you could point at. You will find that enlightened, empowered citizens do your work, and all you do is put it together, make it have sense, and Professor Chaka gives you 80%. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Francois, as we sum up, your takeaway and, of course, your recommendations, if any. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Number one, I would want us to commit colleagues from academia who are here to use the RGS as a tool, not only for teaching, but also for research. We cite it, we reference it, we talk about it, because it's very comprehensive. It looks at all sectors. Then number two is also to go and then do further research in the areas that have been highlighted, especially those poorly performing ones. There are deep reasons, probably RGB could get them, but we have to be challenged further to go and analyze specific sectors that are not doing well. Number three is to really go back and think, how can we improve the human capital formation? Because this is very critical. Talking about citizens, talking about happiness, talking about justice, talking about everything, it all goes with how are we investing in people? How much are we doing to make sure that the good governance we are having, all these good index we are having can be sustainable in terms of who does what? Because coming from academia, we have to make sure that really we have well-trained young people who can be able to maintain what Honorable Minister is talking about, the justice system, very good security. So it's all comprehensive, and again goes back to how do we seriously invest and quality-wise in people for this country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Francois. Dr. Kabele, as we sign off, last but not least, definitely, your recommendations or your takeaway as we move on?
Thank you very much. Let me just highlight 3 takeaways from this initiative. The first one actually, I'm building on the point made by the RR, the UNDP resident representative and UN resident coordinator. And I hope Professor Shaka got that point. I want to re-emphasize it. in order to deepen the strategic value of this initiative and be able to sell it across the continent, it is important to continuously sharpen the methodology. And in that regard, it would be helpful, therefore, to kind of come up with that structure that he referred to. He referred to it as a sounding board. And this actually could be continental and international. Could involve Rwandan experts, continental experts, even some international experts. We can even call it a reference group. A reference group that would regularly meet and reflect and propose ways of improving. And then the impact will be even more. That's my first reflection, Fiona. The second is, let's look at all the pillars that have been presented. We heard and we saw on the screen that the pillar that has performed the best is safety and security. And even myself as a visitor to Rwanda can attest to that, definitely. I can attest to that. And that's probably why I come to this country regularly. That's why the last time I was here was June, July, Honorable Minister. And in fact, saying that, Honorable Minister, since you are in charge of partly of that portfolio of security, justice, they're interconnected. I think, given the frequency I visit this country, I think I now deserve a passport. Before I leave here, Honorable Minister, I'm going to work with Shaga to sign my citizenship forms. but on a serious note, this is a fact, it's not fiction, of safety and security. I'll give you just one interesting anecdote, that Rwanda is the champion of free movement of persons on our continent. We have just signed the protocol on free movement of persons, right of residence and right of establishment. Rwanda is the champion. Rwanda has opened up its borders to all Africans to come in and out freely. And they're not frightened. They're not, because a number of countries will say, security, terrorism. Rwanda is not bothered, because they know they have institutions, law and order, rule of law, law and order institutions that work. You need not go too far. Just drive down to the border. I don't know the parts of the country very well. Drive down to the border between Rwanda and DRC. I've been there once. I saw it with my own eyes. People crisscrossing border, no passport, just card, ID card, crisscrossing. And I'm told by reliable sources in immigration that per day you have 45,000, close to 50,000 people, DRC, crisscross. And there are no criminal activities recorded. 45,000 per day. So I confirm that finding. And then, Prof. Shaga, we need to then find a way in which we sustain that success in Rwanda. But let me land on a not so positive takeaway. This one I will call it a red flag. Let me call this a red flag, coming from the report. And Honorable Minister is here, Honorable Ministers are in the House also. Let's take this collectively as a red flag. From government, non-governmental sector, the UN is here. This is this. Look at the poor performer. Look at the poorly performing pillar. Look at that. That's service delivery. Service delivery is the poorly performing pillar, if I recall it well. Now, we need to take that seriously and respond urgently. because that is where it matters most. And this is not the problem, a peculiarly Rwandan problem. It's a problem across the board on our continent. The problem of inequality, poverty, unemployment, underdevelopment. This is the core of the issue when it comes to governance. Let's take it seriously. Let me give you what is happening now, currently, as we speak. This week, in fact, from 25th of September, I'm sure most of us are following developments on our continent. What's happening in South Africa now? On the 25th of September, we saw public protests. Roads shut down in Cape Town. And clashes between people and the police. And why were citizens protesting? 3 issues. They are protesting against poverty. Can you imagine? Protesting against poverty, against crime, against unemployment. Protests. So you don't want to wait until a situation like that happens in Rwanda. Let's be proactive and prevent that situation. And this is not only Cape Town. In Johannesburg, yesterday, the day before yesterday, in Johannesburg, a town called Westbury. Again, public protest clashes with police. This time around, the protests are against, again, poverty, crime, criminal gangs, corruption in the police service. Now, these are warning signs. These are alarm bells that I think Rwanda better responds to. Although they are not happening in Rwanda, but better respond to it. Because this is also how the Arab Springs happened in North Africa. That's how they happened. Now, finally, then Fiona, we need then to be able to prioritize that. And I'm glad that in the recommendations, there's one recommendation that speaks to, I was listening carefully to Dr. Kaitesi. There's a recommendation that speaks to strengthening social protection to enhance human security. In my view, that should be the top priority. It should have actually come as the first recommendation. That's where Rwanda's governance should be steered towards. Centering governance on the right to development. People's livelihoods improved. And let's then allow RGB through RGS steer Rwanda's governance towards improving social development of the country and enhancing the livelihoods of Rwandans. In particular, Rwandans in rural areas. Let me emphasize, in rural areas, because that's where poverty, unemployment, and the development is more pronounced. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Please let's give a round of applause to my panelists, able panelists, who have been able to discuss in details the 5th edition of the RGS. I'll now call upon Professor Shaka, and of course, as we prepare for group photo, for his closing remarks, and of course, the launch officially of the RGS 5th edition. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fiona. May I ask for a round of applause for our very great moderator, Fiona, for doing a great job. And thank you very much, the great panelists. We heard you, and thank you for the inputs. They are all relevant. Rendezvous next year. You will assess that now. So I'm pleased at this juncture to share with you the... Do we have it? Or? At this juncture, I was requested on behalf of Rwanda Governance Board and my team to launch the Rwanda Governance Scorecard 5th edition. It is, as we have discussed, it states the state of governance in our land. Overall, you can see on before you that 4 out of 8 pillars are in green. When I say in green, we have excellent performance, above 80%, and the other 4 are in yellow. If I can name them, because I think that's for the sake of caution, the most performing indicator is safety and security, that scored 94.97%. Congratulations to our citizens and our security organs. The second best performer in pillar is control of corruption, transparency, and accountability, with 83.72. Next to political rights and civil liberties, 83.83, that will be the second one. And the fourth best performing indicator will be the rule of law, with 83.68%. Those 4 are the best, top best performers pillars. So it doesn't mean they are perfect, but it means they have scored high. But as you have seen from the presentation of Dr. Felicien, but also the recommendations from my colleague, Dr. Yusta, even those well-performing or high-performing indicators, they might have some variables and sub-indicators or indicators on which they need to work on. The next well-performing pillar, but in the yellow category, is economic and corporate governance, which scored 78.04%. Next to it is participation and inclusiveness, that scored 76.79%. Follows investing in human and social development with 75.55% as a score. And lastly, we have the quality of service delivery, that scored quality of service delivery that scored 74.25%. The other colors you see below, you just it is a scorecard. It shows you even even indicators which performed well, and others which has good performance. Those are the ones in yellow. And you have put that scorecard to make it easy for reference for the different institutions to have a perspective of what they need to work on. Building on what our good RC has emphasized, it is my pleasure to let Rwandans know, and the large global community, that this Rwanda Governance Scorecard actually helps to track implementation of both the national strategy for transformation, but also the Africa we want the Agenda 2063, and mainly the SDGs. Out of the 17 goals of SDGs, 12 are being measured through the RGS. And 34% of all targets of SDGs are being measured through our mechanism. With reference to goals 16, 70% or 7 out of 10 targets under that goal are captured, measured under the Rwanda governance scorecard. That's to say, as my brother said, Kabele, that actually it is putting Rwanda, RGS is putting Rwanda forward when it comes to national commitments, but also to continental and global obligations in terms of tracking progress, both in governance and in development. I'm also happy to state that this instrument, you have seen it, it's not because Minister Busingye is sitting here, but I want to applaud the justice sector for being the most responsive to our work. They have been the most improved. And you understand that's why we have wanted Minister Busingye to come here, because he has a lot of stuff to offer. He doesn't make my life easy, because once reports are out, I know he's gonna call me, but with a smile, and asking more details and what should be done and how we discuss. And I think that's the right attitude for transformation and for the Rwanda we want in the next years. There are many institutions I want to thank. We get a lot of good data from civil society. I must also say that most of the information, the data we use on political and civil liberties, they are coming from civil society. Most of them. Because, as Minister Busingye said, our civil society is growing. But also our civil society is taking steady, firm steps to hold accountable public institutions and also hold accountable themselves. And I think it's a good thing. Thirdly, let me say that Rwanda Governance Scorecard, through the 1st to the 5th edition, is a clear manifestation, and it shows us to what extent Rwanda is moving steadily towards building and sustaining a social, developmental, democratic state. That's our ambition, and that's where our commitment as a country is. Finally, going forward, we will, together with different partners, now endeavor to implement the recommendations, RGB, to take on the monitoring of the implementation, as well as to take the RGS to the higher level as it has been outlined by all the panelists actually, whether when it comes to the reference group or whether it comes to making it a platform for further engagements, and whether it comes to giving back to the African Union, to which we belong proudly, what it deserves, sharing experiences in a solidarity, in an open mind, for the benefit of the continent. I'm sure that is the wish and the will of this country of Rwanda and its leadership. As good citizens and people who to some extent know where we want to be in the next years, we commit to be your partner, Professor Kabele. If the African Union calls us and the PRM And on behalf of my team, I'm sure we have been responsive. We will continue to be responsive. At this juncture, allow me to say that now this Rwanda Governance Scorecard 5th edition is hereby launched. And now it can be accessible through, we are complying with online services as well. So it can be accessible after the launch on the web page of the Rwanda Governance Scorecard, which can be accessed through our website. I'm sure the people that are more knowledgeable than I, they can show it. It will be there with more details than we have shared here. I thank you very much, and I'm back to Fiona. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. And I call upon, before you go back and take your seat, sir, maybe come back for a group photo. And I call upon all ministers present, all heads of institutions present, the diplomatic corps, please come forward for a quick group photo session before we break off for lunch. Yes. Protocol, please come and help us as we prepare for the photo session. Thank you. Thank you very much. How can I?
Is it? Yes. Okay, so I should put it in my CV.
I should put it in.
Yes. Imagine ever since I was so. This is the first time since I was born. Really? This is part of my story.
I've been trying to get everyone. Yes,
Yeah.
hopefully it works out soon.
I guess you don't have a number, you must be the only one out of the I do.
Please come forward for the group photo before we break off for lunch. Members of the clergy. Thank you.